Thank you, Madam President, and much respect for the words presented. I will state clearly for the record that in my limited time here, I've been told on many occasions that you are an excellent leader of the Senate, given the fact that you're in the majority party and I'm in the minority, and I can say that. We can disagree, and I can still recognize some of the things that you've done. This is not meant to be offensive. In fact, you mentioned the plaques. My father's name's on one of these plaques. And he taught me that when things don't make sense, when you have the opportunity, present them. That's all we're doing. So with that, Madam President, members of the Senate and those listening in person and virtually, today the Senate will vote on the rules package that will govern the Senate floor for the 153rd General Assembly. What I've learned in my short time as a senator for the 16th District is that words matter, and so do rules. And that is why I will join my Republican colleagues in offering up several amendments to the presented rules package. The amendments presented are not outlandish, they are not offensive. They are, in my opinion, and the opinion of many listening, good governance rules that open up transparency and ensure that Delawareans, including community leaders, constituents, and even, dare I say, lobbyists, are properly included in the process. I would like to read a quote in a recent article referencing the importance of committee meetings. I'm mentioning this because I'm getting ready to speak to committee meeting process. The quote is this: "Committee hearings play an incredibly valuable role in our legislative process. It gives members of the public a chance to provide their direct input about legislation before it comes to a vote." That is a quote from my good friend Senator Dave Sokola. So to my colleagues across the aisle, as I ask you to take a moment to listen and consider this amendment and the amendments that follow. And if they make sense to you, join me. Amendment number 1, it simply states this: it's a recorded vote. That's all. In other words, after a bill is presented and a conversation had, members of the committee shall go on the record by way of a voice vote, yes or no. If the bill needs work, the sponsor can lay it on the table and bring it back. If the members of the committee feel like they want to move it forward and work on it after the fact, they can do that, but we need to state that clearly for the record. I think that the bill speaks to good governance. The current process promotes private meetings away from the public and a lack of understanding as to where the bill currently stands. And how do I know that? Because the members of the community that I represent and folks up and down the state have said so, and that makes sense. So I would offer that amendment up for consideration. If there are any questions, if there are none, please call the vote.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Amendment 2 to Senate Resolution 2, the rules package, it's pretty simple. We heard several times here over the last few minutes that this is a deliberative body. And to add that deliberative nature to what we do here, this would require gubernatorial appointments that come before this body to first go before the standing committee where that nominee would fall under. For example, if we got a nominee for, which we will be getting here in January, for the Department of Natural Resources, well, I guess that nominee would go in front of the Natural Resources Transportation Committee first. We have members of this body that have expressed interest in certain areas of state government, and they've been asked, or they've asked to go on to, or they've been placed on certain committees. We kind of consider them more of the subject matter experts here in Delaware. So this would just say the nominee goes in front of those committees first, gets heard by them. Again, slowing down the process. You know, we've heard a lot of times that sometimes the process in this chamber moves a little too fast on certain things. That allows us to have more deliberative conversations, to do a deeper dive on some of these nominees, so that when they come before us as a body for a full vote, we know that they've been vetted fully, and all members have had more than ample opportunity to ask questions of them.
Our Senate Resolution Amendment number 3 to Senate Resolution 2 deletes the lines 864 through 868 in their entirety and inserts the following. It allows the testimony from the general public, including those affected by the proposed legislation. The chair shall, an emphasis on shall, provide at least 2 minutes to each individual wishing to provide testimony. Citizens have a right to comment on what their elected officials are considering and how their decisions are affecting their daily lives. Decisions made during committee hearings help determine the type of future we will experience. What type of society will we be leaving our children, grandchildren, and generations to come? I believe that everyone should know just how important their involvement is in understanding their role in preserving individual rights. Anyone from the public who has attempted to testify during committee hearings, either in person or online, knows the hearing process is flawed. The good part is that anyone from the public may sign up to speak. For most hearings, their time is limited to 2 minutes, but at least the public is granted that right. However, at some hearings, the time to speak has been limited to 1 minute, after which members of the public are abruptly cut off, often in mid-sentence with a warning, "Your time is up." This lack of respect for members of the public is a problem. No matter what party you belong to, this lack of serious dialogue is disrespectful and dangerous and should not be allowed to continue. The right to free speech contained in the First Amendment was put there to allow political debate. From electric car mandates to government-ordered shutdowns, the public has a right to push back and express their frustration with the process when it adversely affects their daily lives. Finally, I remind my colleagues that many of us just took an oath of office, and all of us take that same oath of office. In that oath, we acknowledge that the powers of this office flow from the people we are privileged to represent. We further swear to always place the public interest above any special or personal interest. I think that means that you take time to listen to all the comments from members of the public, even when it involves more of your time.
Thank you. This amendment would prohibit the Senate from considering a bill or resolution on the same calendar day that the bill or resolution is reported out of committee unless the leadership of the Senate Minority Caucus consents. What this does, as we talked about deliberation, time to think about it, all these things play directly into this amendment. We rush the bills, they come through the committee without a public vote, and they're on the floor within an hour at times. They're here without any chance for the public to make comment, without any chance for we to deliberate on them. All of a sudden they're put on the floor. Again, because of the large majority difference, there's little time for debate, there's little time for anything. We're rushed to move on. And I think that this would allow, simply by changing it from legislative to calendar day, this would allow some serious deliberation. It would prevent rushing legislation. It would be respect to the minority caucus. You know, sooner or later, back in '73, the tables were turned. This will allow that not to be disrespected regardless. And I think that's something we need to consider. It allows for more public scrutiny, and it allows also, it actually builds public trust, and that's something that is lacking. The public doesn't trust us. We hurry things, we push things through, we take votes behind closed doors, we don't address the public, we don't give them 2 minutes. It's always hurry, hurry, hurry. And that's not right. We are supposed to be representing them, and how can we do that when we rush things through? There's a bill heard in committee, and then immediately it's on the floor, literally within hours. The public doesn't stand a chance. I know all of us have gotten cold. How did that pass? Well, you weren't paying attention because you missed your 2-minute window or your 30-second window. That's a problem. I think we need to build trust with the public, and we need to build it soundly and deliberately, and I think we need to move on so that these bills are not fired through and all of a sudden we're stuck with something that we should have thought about more. And it doesn't have to go to the courts to decide whether it's constitutional or not. It doesn't have to be further deliberated because we took our time. And you all have said that. We need to take our time. And we're not doing that. We're pushing. We have all kinds of superfluous stuff to do, but we don't pay attention to our public.
I've said it before when I first got here. I said at the end of last session, I'll continue to say it. The carpet makes no sense to me. And that is all this does. It requests that Senate leadership not necessarily get rid of the carpet, but move the carpet to the center of the room and do what Senator McBride said in her prayer, which is, let's work to get along. Let's interact with folks. What are we afraid of? If the rule is that we're going to whip up the votes on the floor, show me an example of when that happened last year on the floor, because I must have missed it. So all that is, I won't belabor it. I believe in it. Other states do it, including very blue states. Thank you, Madam President, and good news for those folks listening. This will be the last one. But I want to thank the colleagues on this side of the aisle and the folks across the aisle for listening to consider some of these, which I had to be legitimate requests. And I think this one here speaks directly to it. It speaks to the number of bills that an individual legislator in the Senate side can introduce in a year and in a General Assembly year. All it says is that you get 5 in 1 year. You get 10 in 2 years. It makes sense to me. There's plenty to go around. Delaware's not that broken that we need to overwhelm staff and committee hearings and the public process with all these bills, many of which are redundant, can be cured during policy changes and not ribbon cuttings. This is something that's done in other states, including, my friends, California, a state that we tend to want to follow. So how about we follow them on this one? Not that I always recommend that. And limit the amount of times that we honor ourselves and instead get focused on necessary bills for all Delawareans, something that this would do.